Pool play is over and done with. The 20-team field reduced to 8. Actually, it's been further reduced since the quarterfinals started before pool play ended, but I'm only speaking about pool play here. 4 venues, 8 days, 40 games. It was full of surprises, disappointments, really close games, some went to extra innings, blowouts, a few ending with the mercy rule, records broken, sellout crowds, as well as some games with mostly empty ballparks. There were a lot of questions going in. We had not seen a WBC in 6 years, so it was hard to know what to expect. Now those questions have been answered, so I'd like to go over those today. Things I think we all learned after seeing the first round of play, and just some of my thoughts on it. If you've got a different take on it, let us know in the comments. Here's what I've got. First of all, past performance in the WBC doesn't really mean anything. A couple months ago when I started doing my team previews, I pretty much said that. There have only been 4 WBCs and the last one was 6 years ago, so basing your predictions on a team's past performance is kinda silly. However, as the tournament drew near, I started doing just that, particularly with the Netherlands. I found it hard to pick against them. They seemed like they had some kind of WBC magic, and could hang with the best teams even if they didn't have the best talent. They didn't play poorly. If they had won their last game, they would have been pool champions. But it seems to me that a Dutch team from a past WBC would not have lost twice in that pool. Another example of that is Venezuela. A lot of people counted Venezuela out because they usually underperform in the WBC, but they didn't this time. Puerto Rico, on the other hand, does appear to have some kind of WBC magic, or they just know how to beat the Dominicans. Either way, they'll be a hard team to bet against in future WBCs. Pool B was too easy for Japan. They played great. They might have gone undefeated in any pool. I like that they brought Japan and Korea back together in pool play for the first time since the 2009 WBC, and everyone thought Korea would put up a better fight than they did. Australia provided a little challenge and surprised us all by beating Korea. But Pool B was the one pool with 2 teams that had no chance whatsoever. Pool A, meanwhile, had 5 teams that all had a chance, and it showed in the final standings. All 5 teams were 2-2. That made for an exciting group. Who doesn't love chaos like that? But it would have been a lot more balanced if Panama had been put in Pool B and the Czech Republic had gone to Pool A. The Czech story was great, and I'll talk about that later, but they took the teams that were seen as the 19th and 20th ranked teams in the tournament, the only 2 teams without any players who played in MLB last year, and put them in the same pool. The pool needed one more competitive team, and Panama versus Australia, Panama versus Korea, maybe even Panama versus Japan would have matched up well. This is not something I'm saying in hindsight. It's something we could all see when the groups were announced, so this could have been avoided. Since I've already mentioned Pool A, the last place team having the same record as the first place team and being relegated to the qualifiers just doesn't seem fair. I say it doesn't seem fair because I don't really have a solution to it. Taiwan will be alright. They'll make it back to the WBC. The qualifier will probably be hosted by Taiwan, which will be great for attendance, and they could use that after the poor attendance at last fall's qualifiers. And they'll be paired with other teams in the region. China, New Zealand, probably Pakistan and South Africa too. Taiwan will put together a team of CPBL All-Stars, and they'll just roll over everyone. So no problem, right? But what if Panama had been the odd one out? After beating 2 good teams in the WBC, they'd be right back in the Caribbean qualifier, with Nicaragua and Brazil, maybe Colombia, with a high probability of not making it out. You could make an exception and say that any team that wins 2 games but still finishes last is exempt from relegation, but then it theoretically could happen in all 4 pools, and then you'd have no qualifiers next time. Or you'd have to expand the field just for the sake of holding qualifiers, and that just seems silly, and I don't really have a solution to it. But it all goes back to having better balanced pools. If you switch the Czech Republic and Panama, I'm pretty sure the Czech team would have been last in Pool A, probably 0-4, and back to the qualifiers. While that certainly would have made for more organized pool play, we wouldn't have had that great story of the Czech team getting their first WBC win and automatically qualifying for the next WBC. That's another thing we learned, that the Czech Republic is on the rise in the baseball world. We knew before the tournament began that they had an ex-major league player and a couple ex-minor leaguers who could hit the ball. In the tournament, we saw their Division II college player hit a double off Roki Sasaki. We got to see their 19-year-old pitcher who's committed to Georgia Tech pitch in the WBC. They will have their first player reach the major league level before the end of the 2020s. I'm sure of it. The WBC game scored good ratings back in the Czech Republic, something we don't usually see in European countries. This could very soon become the strongest country in Europe, not counting the Netherlands, which, concerning baseball, is really more of a Caribbean country. Elsewhere in Pool B, China deserves to be relegated. The team was such a mystery going in. We knew very little about the players. There was a chance they could surprise us all, but they didn't belong here. In fact, it may be a long time before we ever see them return. They didn't look like a team that could have made it out of the qualifiers. One bright spot was pitcher Alan Carter. He was good in college last year, looked good in the WBC, and he just signed with the Angels a few weeks ago. He looks like he's got the potential to reach the highest levels. Not much to say about Pool C, really. Mexico and USA advanced as most people expected. USA lost one game as they always do in the first round. Colombia was a bit disappointing, but everyone knew an upset from Britain was possible. The pool of death was a three-team race. Israel and Nicaragua could not compete with the top three teams. Not a big surprise, but we thought those two might at least put a scare into one of them. Sucks for Nicaragua. They finally got here, but were only given one winnable match. They played great in that one, but couldn't hold on, so they're going back to the qualifiers. In any other pool, they would have had more than one opportunity to pull off a win, and maybe avoid relegation. If they make it back to the big tournament next time, the WBC owes it to them to give them a better chance. As for the rest of Pool D, I've already talked about Puerto Rico and their WBC magic. Many are saying that the Dominican Republic is a huge disappointment. I disagree. Saying that really takes away from how good Venezuela is. The quality of Venezuela's roster was on about the same level as the Dominican team. Puerto Rico has a good team put together too, and their ability to beat the Dominicans when it counts is nothing new. That's why they called it the Pool of Death. Someone had to be third, and that team is the Dominican Republic. The real reason to be disappointed in the Dominican team is not their performance in pool play, but the number of players who withdrew from the roster in the weeks leading up to the WBC. In the WBC overall, we saw that the best teams often get off to a rough start but get better as the tournament goes on. Japan had some problems when they faced China, but looked great the rest of the way. Mexico was upset in their first game but made sure it never happened again. Cuba appeared to have the most talented team in Pool A, but dropped their first two before winning big in their last two, and then winning in the quarterfinals. For this reason, I think the 5-team round robin is a better way to find the top 8 teams. With the 4-team pools they used to have, 2 losses almost always meant you were out. It didn't allow for a slow start before the players really start to click as a team. Under the old format, the first round was followed by another group stage. Now it's a knockout stage, so after the first round, teams have to be perfect if they want to stay alive. And so the very best team might get upset and not make it to the championship game. But I like it better this way. If you're going to lose, do it early. By the end of the tournament, the champion team's got to be able to win every time. Then there was the attendance. This WBC will set a new record for the highest attendance, and the WBC should be counted among some of the biggest World Cups in international sports. But anyone hoping that the WBC can be like the World Cups of soccer or rugby, where you have all rounds in a single country and people from all over the world travel to that one place and fill the stands for all the games, sorry to tell you, we're not there yet. When the home team plays, the seats are filled. You could see that in Tokyo, Taichung, and Phoenix. But when you've got 2 teams from nowhere nearby, the crowds are noticeably small. Bigger than they used to be. I wouldn't call any of the crowd sizes embarrassingly small, like we used to see. But imagining a WBC played entirely in one country, the majority of games would look like that. The only exception to this was Pool D in Miami, where almost every game was a sellout. But that's because it was almost all Caribbean teams playing there. Every game had a home team, sometimes 2, but you'll never get that with every group. So the setup they have now is the one they should stick with. But that's just what I think. Let me know what you think down in the comments. That's all for this one, and until next time, this is Baseball International. See ya!